and we're continuing our series on financial literacy with Synergy Credit Union. And today I'm joined by Christine Tucker, who is the Chief Financial Officer. Welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us again. This series has been very enjoyable for all of us.
Well, and very educational for myself as well. There's just so much that I don't know about savings and money and insurance. And one thing we're going to talk about today is having an emergency fund. And I know a lot of people talk about it, and in theory they think, yeah, I should do it, yeah, I should do it. But what is a fund, and why is it so important to have the emergency fund?
So emergency fund to me, in simplistic terms, really it's a stash of cash for those times that you need an emergency. So you need it easily accessible and able to access quickly so that you can meet the needs that you have in an emergency situation.
What would be some of those things that people might not think of that they use the money for?
Well, and that's a great example, because I think sometimes emergency gets people thinking catastrophic events, right? So they think natural disaster, they think a car accident, and so I think the probability is so low that lots of people think, why have an emergency fund? That's never going to happen to me. But I think really we should shift our mindset, and it's a life happens kind of fund.
Right.
And so we can all think of things that have happened to us that we weren't expecting, that all of a sudden we have to have funds available for.
Well, and even, you know, you mentioned car accidents, but things like even with family, with having children, something could come up with school or pets even, I think is a really good example. A lot of people that have pets don't realize that sometimes if something happens to them, they could need surgery. You don't have that money, and so it's just, you have to, I think, like you said, switch your mindset to think that there are a number of different things that not catastrophic, but it would be really nice to have that fund.
Exactly, yeah, and you don't want to add stress in times where you're already stressful, right? So adding debt in times of stress just adds more stress.
Right.
Which it's just a vicious circle to get out of. And so I think you're 100% right. There's a lot of things that we maybe don't know when they're going to happen, but we know they're going to happen. So a great example is a furnace going off in January and it's minus 30 out. You can't very well say, sorry, my budget doesn't allow for it to be fixed today, right? You need to have the ability to be able to have that put away. Some other examples, a pet is a great example when you're not expecting to have to take them in. A medical bill, there's still bills we have to pay in Canada, even though we're lucky enough to have some of that covered. So I think those are great examples. Or even all of a sudden you're driving along and you have no brakes in your car. Right? So that's very important to have those savings set aside so that you can access them quickly.
And I guess, you know, as we talked about that, what is the best way to get that started? Like, we talked about how important it is and you know, get people thinking about it, but where do you go and how do you get started?
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit different for everybody. I think some people, you know, use the sock method, I call it. You know, stuff money in there underneath their mattress kind of thing. But really, the best place to go is to, you know, go to your financial institution, open up a savings account, where at least then nobody can come into your house and take your emergency fund. But it's that simple. It's just an account that you can start making regular contributions to. And
I know some people will be of the mindset, well, you know, I can't really afford this, but it doesn't mean you have to put $1,000 away at a time, right? You just kind of budget accordingly, I guess.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. I think sometimes people just give up just because, oh my goodness, it's just so overwhelming, and so why even start? But you know, take something simple. So we all eat out quite often in society today, but let's say you packed your lunch one day a week. If that lunch was $10 and you packed it one day a week, that's $500 in a year. So it could be as simple as just changing that one habit of, and only one meal, you don't have to give them up all. I know people don't like to give up stuff, but it's that simple. And so I think you make little blocks and you work to smaller goals, and then that makes it achievable, and people are pretty proud of themselves when they are able to get there.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Christine. We're out of time for this hour, but we will be back next hour, and we'll be again talking more about having an emergency fund. And we're back this hour with Christine Tucker, who's the Chief Financial Officer for Synergy Credit Union, again talking about emergency funds. So this time we're going to talk about where to put that money. We kind of alluded to it a little bit last hour, but where's the best place to start with that? You said, you know, really don't keep it in your house, but should you just call somebody at a financial institution or to get started, or how do you decide?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you can reach out to people that are skilled in this is a great advantage. Why not use that? So a financial institution is a great place to start. There's many experts there that can help you, even if you said, I'm struggling to find that lunch, or I'm struggling to find where I can in my budget. They can work through that with you, and they can quickly identify, because they're not emotionally attached like we are,
right,
as people,
right,
to our money, right? So they're able to give great advice. So yes, I highly recommend going in and getting some advice of a financial professional, for sure.
And what kind of a goal do you set to start with? Is it, like you said, you can't really plan. So how do you really know how much you should try and set away?
Yeah, so this is where I think people throw their hands up in the air and give up early, because the experts would say 6 months worth of expenses. So let's say your expenses, it doesn't take long to be $10,000, $12,000, $15,000, depending on different people's lifestyles, right? So that's back to what I talked about the building blocks. So start with a goal and start small, and have it come directly off your paycheck and go into a savings account. That's where the financial institution can help you, because they can set up that account. It comes off, and you know what? It's just like paying the government. You don't like it, but it's off your check and you can't spend it.
Right, and you sure feel better when you have it when you need it.
For sure, yes.
And how do you make it a habit? Is it the best way just to do what you talked about, make sure it's coming off that check, so then you just really start to not think about it?
Yeah, I think that works for most people, because I think once we see it, we want to spend it. Because some people, well, I'll put my tax return in there, which is fantastic if you can be disciplined enough not to touch it, right? But as you so you start with $10, and then you go, well, I'm not really missing that. Maybe I'll go to $20, and pretty soon you start to build up that nest egg. So I think that's the easy way. For people that really struggle and are more visual, a good example might be to go to the ATM at the beginning of the week when you have your budget. And if it's $100 for the week, you only spend till you have no more cash in your hand.
Right.
And once that cash is gone, you learn not to spend. So you can create ways to trigger you to be able to do that. Because sometimes with credit cards, debit cards, it's not so real, right? Until the machine says declined.
Right. And it's so much easier too if you have that and you just keep thinking. And some people I know get in the mindset, well, I'm just going to buy a coffee and a sandwich, so it's only $4. But you can $4 yourself till your account is depleted. So if it's coming out of your account, then that way it's there, it's done, and like you said, you're not thinking about it.
Yeah, for sure. I think for sure that's probably the strategy that works for most people.
How do you stop people, Christine, from getting discouraged in this? Because I know seems like every time you turn around, someone's got their hand in your pocket for something else, right? And yes, as we discussed, this is a benefit in the end, but how do you kind of keep them upbeat and not get discouraged from this?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it does feel like some months it's like that, right?
It is, yeah.
I think you need to reward yourself. So set your goals to something that's attainable, and then reward yourself, not monetarily, obviously.
Right.
Please don't go buy a new pair of shoes like I would. But what I would recommend to people is, maybe you have that extra half an hour with the paper on a Saturday morning because that's what you like to do. But find ways to congratulate yourself, because it does take discipline, and it does take that consistent savings to be able to succeed in this. But it really is a key component to your future financial health.
And if people are wanting information and trying to get this set up, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so we welcome you into our new building down on 42nd Street. You're more than welcome to talk to us, talk to another financial professional. Whatever it is, just take the first step.
All right, thank you so much for joining us today. And once again, Christine Tucker from Synergy Credit Union, and just call Synergy if you'd like more information on this or any of the topics that we have discussed.